Good morning, everyone. It's really exciting to be here with you guys. We are having a session that's a little bit outside of our regular schedule. We host this live events every third Thursday of the month. So we are going to have one more this month. So we got lucky to have two of them. But we want to have this session because we've missed last month for some reasons. So here we are. I'm excited to have everyone. Welcome. We are broadcasting this live on multiple platforms, so please don't hesitate to leave your comments. I will be addressing the questions as we speak. Our title of the topic is today really exciting and really close to heart is how to build high performing assortments. Lots of times our clients coming in thinking that their assortment is great, but yet it's underperforming. And we start to unveil the different reasons and root causes of why they're underperforming. And what we notice a lot of the times that they're not structured correctly in the first place. But before we dive in, let me introduce myself. My name is Ye, or full name is Evgenia Alexandrovna Yushkova. I'm a fashion business consultant and specialize in merchandising and private label strategy. And thank you so much for turning in today the session. And once again, we are talking about the art and science of building the high performing assortments today. Let's really be direct, right? Retailers are losing up to 30% of potential revenue because their assortments aren't optimized. That is not a small leak. That is a hole in a boat, if you think about it. If your currently strategy are still based on a gut instinct or last year bestsellers, or you are planning your assortments 9 months ahead of the times and looking at your last season trends, you're really leaving the money on the table. Every item on your shelf or your site is either adding value or quietly draining away your margins. And in today's retail climate, where customers are more selective and the competition is tighter than ever, assortment can make it or break your brand. So it's not necessarily just the marketing issue and brand awareness issue when your product doesn't sell. A lot of times we have to look at under the hood whether the assortment is actually structured correctly and optimized for success. So in this session, I'll walk us through the proven strategies we use with our $10+ million brands on reshaping their assortment and unlocking their serious growth. We will cover how to use data analytics to the spot really bestsellers and eliminate underperformers. We're going to also look at how to balance assortment depth and breadth for maximum profitability. And I'll also show you how one brand improved their net margins by 20%, just rethinking how they build them and manage their SKU mix. But let's jump in. First, I really want us to start talking about why the most assortments really miss the mark. Really, here's the truth that we see among majority of our clients, and this is a repetitive root cause, that most buying decisions are still made really based on their habit or historical data. And a lot of the buyers still use their personal preference versus making data-driven decisions. But really, you're not alone if you are going through this. But it's also, you have to understand that it's not scalable and it's certainly not profitable. And it's not just about bad guesses or about systematic blind spots. Really, most merchants are pressured by seasonality. Creative teams and buyers are strong opinions of what needs to be bought and what needs to go on the floor, which also results that you're managing legacy assortments in a fast evolving market. If you are the only looking at the top line sales, you're probably missing margin killers behind that are hiding in the plane that we really need to look and find where they are. Let's give you some examples of what I mean by that. I've seen brands that scale SKUs because they are 80% sell through. And agreed, right? From the really beginning, it really looks impressive, and we really need to push this and market more and sell more of it. But when we layer in the margin data, that the same SKU delivered one of the lowest gross margin return on investment in the entire category. It was moving, but it was really draining the profit. And this is what is often underlooked when we work with the merchandising teams and our retailers that coming in to help and asking us to help. Really, there's two matrix that change the game for our clients: is the gross margin return on investment, and also sell through adjusted for margin. This tells you not just what's selling, but where it's worth to invest. Here's what most of the teams get wrong: they track sales volume, not to the capital efficiency of the inventory. Gross margin return on investment really is for thinking about what is every dollar that you invest in a SKU and how much you're getting back in a gross margin. If your gross margin return on investment is under one, you are losing money on that product. And you really should be putting a full stop, even if it has the highest sell through. And the sell through without uh, profit context, what are you going to really sell at the end of the day if you're not going to make the money, right? How are you going to scale the last three leaders by accident? So I really love to get your questions as you guys are listening to this. Please do comment below so that we could be able to address them. I'd love to get questions as we go so we can make this collaborative conversation. I'm really welcoming any of your comments and feedback. So don't be shy. Please do jump into the conversation. Really excited. Great. Sam, thank you so much for sending your comment. I really appreciate it. So one of the questions that Sam is asking, what about the new brands without the ton of historical data? And it's a really great question. For new brands, I recommend starting with really a forecast proxy where you're going to look at the trend reports, market analysis, and the competitor SKUs tracking. But for day one that you start to sell, you need to make sure that your hierarchy is really set up to track the performance by category and the price tier. Because what it really makes sense with what you're going to measure so that later on you know how to optimize. So making sure that you actually have the tracking system in place and collecting that data from day one is absolutely critical. How often should I review assortment performance? Thank you. Fantastic question that you're asking, Mary. I really appreciate it. Well, ideally monthly, I would suggest, but if at minimal quarterly. But if some now with the AI analytics coming into play and some of the phenomenal solutions that are out there, for example, as well, Patchwork that offers to actually getting you in, plugging it into your system and be able to predict your sales and your performance ongoing pretty much to every week and be able to produce to that in the short periods of time in 14 days, you really start to even potentially, if you can layer it into looking bi-weekly, that would be ideal. And I don't just look what it sold, right? You need to make sure that you analyze what didn't and why it didn't sell. And where are the opportunity for you to be able to take and put an investment in so that you can get maximum ROI. Let's move with the science of using analytics to guide really your buys. The highest performing assortments that are never the results of guesswork and aesthetic of performance. It's really about building the layered data. And this is where most teams understand the impact of how that data can really shape and get the better results of making decisions of what product to push and what product is actually bringing profits. You want to look at your assortment through really multidimensional lens. You want to look at the SKU level margin, sell through by style, size, color. And we often even say go forward even to fabrics and type of decorations, or if you do working on prints, or if you are working with highly decorated products. Think about the vendor performance by delivery consistency. Look at their return rates and margin contribution. And even the customer behavior data like size silhouettes or add to cart rates and return reasons can give us a good indicator of how to shape our assortment and where things are actually working towards us and where they're not. Sell-through data is just purely sell-through data to make those decisions is just simply not enough in today's environment. And why do we really need to do this is because product performance isn't just what's sold, like I mentioned, right? It really thinking about, did it sell profitably? Did it sell efficiently? And in a way that builds long-term brand value. Here's some of the examples of the client that we worked with. They had 3 denim suppliers, all showed similar top line sell through. But when we analyzed margin by wash, cut, and size, we discovered something that the teams kept missing and never didn't even have a sight of because they never analyzed it on that level. Only one supplier was consistently delivering healthy margin, on time delivery, and lower returns across all of their core sizes. The others looked good on the surface level based on the report on how they sold. But once we had to have they had to be heavily discounted and they had a really high return rate. And so they really put them on the inflated list prices because we actually had to encounter the return rates that were consistently being high from that particular vendor. So another had really a sky high return rates, like I mentioned. They also had an extended size problem where they were not profitable on the extended sizes, where seemed like on the regular sizes they were great, but once it got to the extended sizes, they were actually negative margin. And so once we really end up looking at this, we eliminated the overlap. We renegotiated the vendor terms and to protect our margin, and we reallocated the inventory to a top performer. We made new agreements with him to be able to actually go and produce the other 2 styles that we were getting from other suppliers. Within one season, their denim margin increased by 12% without adding any single new SKU. That is the power of the informed data-backed decision making. Thinking about when we are talking to our buyers and we are guiding our buyers is we want to really make sure that they understand is how to map margin by size, not just by style. And a style might look like a winner overall, but once we start getting to the extended sizes, especially plus sizes, we could be actually losing money. So don't just measure vendor by sell through, measure return adjusted to gross margin return on investment per vendor. Some vendors spike velocity with trendy items, but they eat away from your margin on the back end. Apply category specific benchmarks. What is the good gross margin return of investment in the bases is different than in fashion tops or outerwear. Set targets accordingly to that. Include fulfillment cost per unit in your analysis. Higher margin doesn't mean more profit if the fulfillment of packaging eats away the contribution. So this is going to be very critical for us to really think. And why is this really critical if you ask? It's because if you are the only reading surface level reports or running pivot tables once a season, you are flying blind. Modern assortment strategy demands weekly or monthly performance checks. We actually recommend to our large clients to actually get data scientists on their teams to be able to analyze this data so granularly. We often say and relied on our merchants, and we think of our merchant as data scientists. We need to also understand they're not. A lot of our merchants are creative people who are actually really passionate about the product, but reading data on such a granular way, you need to be able to give them the tools to do it through the dashboards of already preset way of how this data is collected. That is why if you have an ability or the budget of getting a data scientist on your team, it's a must. Really thinking about segmenting by channel, region, and customer tier, not just by thinking overall your product assortment. Every channel will have its own challenges to and affect the margin. So thinking about your product assortment by channel, which will allow you most likely to even sometimes say no to a specific channel, or have a different type of assortment or narrow down assortment for a specific channel, depending on how that affects your margin. And decision frameworks that help your team to act fast, not just react after the season ends, which is having a dashboards, having the constant reports that are flowing in, and visibility to this data is a must. In a competitive market, you can't afford to treat all SKUs or suppliers equally. So the question isn't what's selling in this topic that we're talking about. The real question is really what's earning at scale and worth scaling further. I'd love to take a pause to answer some of the questions that just came in. Elizabeth, thank you so much for sending the questions. How do I know if my data is clean enough to trust? Great question. Thank you for asking this. Start by auditing how consistent your naming conventions, categories, and price points are across your systems. If also your systems are still not talking to one another, where it seamlessly transitioned the data output that started in your PLM all the way up to your ERPs and PIM, that's something also to look at and potentially optimize and automate to make sure that all of this data flows seamlessly, or have a central data depository for where this data comes in, and then you could be able to filter and sort it correctly. Clean data is not negotiable. It has to be investment of time up front. You have to set the parameters and train your teams to be able to make sure that the consistency of data is actually matching to the data sets and the hierarchies that you are setting up. Or work with a specialist to help you clean up and map it if you don't have this. We offer that service. We're happily to help you if that's something that you're interested in. Great. I got a thumbs up. Thank you so much. I'm really glad that you asked this question. Thank you. Breen, please send your questions in. Should I really rely on AI or buy new software? Tools are only going to be as good as your process behind them. You often hear me talk about this, and especially when it comes to system implementations, is that you don't implement system if you have not yet established your process and optimized it. The system comes after this process optimization because it's a tool to help you automate already optimized process. So if your buying team isn't understanding the question to ask, or no software will save you really, they need to understand what are they need to look at, what are the type of data sets they need to consider when they're making the buys, so that they can ask those questions, so that we can take that software, whether it's AI software or the software you have, and configure it so that it can help them answer those questions on a daily basis. Start with training of your teams, especially from the buying side, right? Again, don't consider your merchants as data analytics. They're not. So they will know enough to do the necessary educated buys, but they will not usually granularly analyze the data like we're talking right now today. Then after that, after the training, and they understand what the data says they need to consider, that's when you start to layer in the tech, and you got to evaluate whether your existing data processing softwares that you have have those capabilities to configure, and if not, potential thinking, like I've mentioned, about central depository that helps you to create this type of data sets to pivot and be able to distribute that to your team through the dashboards. Hopefully this was helpful. Great. Thank you for the thumbs up. I really appreciate it. Well, now let's really talk about the balance. The balance, not just depth and breadth, is where the art comes in, right? So it's not just about thinking of how elaborate our assortment needs to be in order to catch our consumers' eye and get them excited. But we also need to think about, too much depth, you're going to be stuck with the markdowns. Too much breadth, your customer gets confused, and they actually, your brand identity starts to get lost. A lot of times, if we give too many or choices in our assortment, the customer actually will buy less if you're giving them end choices and they know exactly what they're buying from you and how to outfit that and how to actually put that into their wardrobe. So those are the things we always talk about when you hear me talk about the optimization of assortments and multiple different recordings we've done in the past. I always mention, think about and choices, not or choices. It's not about how many SKUs and variations you have. It's about the how everything flows together, how it could be outfitted, how it's presented to the customer, right? Because customers, remember, they're not necessarily going to know how to uh, outfit themselves, especially when they are online. So giving them that in-store experience through online, of giving them shop by look and different other categories of how we could be able to merchandising strategies, how we could be able to have them help to make the decision of what to buy, helps also drive those sales. But your assortment has to be set up for that as well. Here's a strategy I often teach in my coaching sessions, is to really use the depth for proven performers. Your core SKUs, which is going to be your cash flow, your bread and butter of the business, and those are usually 20% that makes 80% of your revenue. And so those are the ones that you have a low risk if you are investing into deep inventory, and you could be able to get through the season because your customer loves it, your customer responds, you have a demand for it. But use the breadth for discovery. This is where we start to utilize the strategies of seasonal capsules, trend drops, or limited editions, pre-orders, pre-sales. But for that, you need to make sure you have agile manufacturing support so that they could be able to respond to the demand quickly and place your reorders and be able to get them back on the floor within 14 to 21 days. So making sure that you have manufacturing partners that work on the modular manufacturing systems and actually able to support you with that and be able to produce to demand is critical when we start talking about the discovery part of the assortment, which usually makes up no more than 30% of your actual total assortment, 30 to 40%. It's a 60-40 or 70-30 split, depending on the business cases of what your brand is about. One of the retailers that we have worked, had a top tier 20% SKU that drove their 80% of their margin. But they were spending their open to buy evenly across categories. I mean, mind-boggling when they came to us, right? Well, so we helped them to trim 15% of their low performance and reinvest them into their top SKUs. That increased their net profit margin by 20%, and it also dropped their return rate by 30% because they were investing in already proven styles that they knew that are going to work and customers respond. They also shifted their marketing dollars towards those, away from this new product that they were bringing in. Because when we the really thinking about the right products are available in the right size and the right time. So the other biggest thing that's important to consider is that for the customers to buy, you need to really keep them buying because you want to make sure that they don't run out of sizes. So when we take some of those dollars away from your key drivers into more of the trendy and assortment that is necessary for us to be able to test, but as well as to have freshness, we then jeopardizing ourselves to run out of sizes of the items that are actually key drivers. So thinking about how you're going to allocate your open to buy dollars or your budgets and putting them into the right assortment is an art of science of balancing it out. So we love working with our clients to figure that out for them and be able to set the parameters for the future assortment developments. But really talking about balance, it's balancing really balancing the depth and the breadth where it really becomes to the art, right? It honestly, it's one of the probably trickiest parts of assortment planning, when even for the advanced teams, even for us, it's very challenging sometimes to look and figure out what is that right balance. Too much depth, we're going to be overexposed. We're tying out the capital, we're increasing our storage costs. And then when the styles are missing, or they are not missing the sizes, we're struggling, we're missing sales. Or if we have too much of it left, we're stuck with the markdown cycle and lots of markdowns, so that we're trying to eliminate that as well. If we do too much breadth, then the customer really gets confused. It really weakens your visual identity and fractures your messaging. and leads to decision fatigue. You know, a lot of times, especially for the emerging brands that come in, sometimes we look at them and we get surprised because they already have multiple categories, SKUs in every category, at least 2 to 3 SKUs, and they're trying to be all over the place and trying to grab the markets from all different angles. We always refocus them. Find what your core is. What is your bread and butter? What is going to be your brand is known for? And grow that first, and then slowly introduce the other categories. That's the way to do it in a more efficient way. And really using the depth for your proven performance, like I've mentioned, and really using the breadth for your discovery, for your testing. But for that, you probably will need to have 2 different supply chain um, avenues. One potentially could be your traditional supply chain that you currently have, but for the agility, you need to find an avenue and a supplier that be able to help you to support the discovery phase without compromising and adding on more inventory into your bucket. So really hope that this was resonating. I'm starting to see questions are coming in. Really, really excited. Thank you so much for bringing the questions. And by the way, if you guys like the content, if you want us to continue this, please give us thumbs up. Do follow us on LinkedIn at Yushkova Design, and please do also help us and follow us on our YouTube channel. We do try to provide maximum value. We're here to learn from one another and share our expertise. We're going to make our content as good as your responses are. So if we know that you guys are excited to see this content and you find it valuable, we're going to produce more of it. If you have particular topics that are pressing to you that you'd like to get answered, send us a comment. We will be able to consolidate, and once we get more inquiries on specific topic, we actually will create more webinars to cover those topics, because we want to be here to help one another and be able to help grow each other's businesses. We have to stay tight together as a group. Thank you for a fantastic question that just came in. What if we need to show variety to complete within the to compete within the fast fashion? Well, this is really a perceived variety. It doesn't it's a dance, right? A perceived variety really doesn't have to mean actual SKU overload. Use visual merchandising and color print variations smartly. And often depth and really perception is not in the inventory. So you're thinking about the re-merchandising way. Sometimes we actually even work with our brands, and we utilize the same product with maybe additional 1 or 2 SKUs, but we come up with all these different varieties of looks that to the customer it looks like we have a ginormous sense of a variety of product, because there's all these different looks that we can come up and create from a small capsule collections. So thinking about in that terms will also help us to compete, and at the same time stay smart with our inventory investments and our not tying up our cash. How do we balance fashion risk with profitability? Great question. Thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate for asking this question. Use a test and chase model, I would suggest, right? Launch about 10 to 15% of your assortment as a test styles, and then really measure them in 2 to 3 weeks, and then double down on the winners. But again, you can only really do that successfully if you have agile manufacturing set up in your supply chain. If you don't in this environment, that's something definitely to pause and think about and find solutions. We're happy to present those solutions to you. Reach out to us. We will be happy to work through your challenges and be able to give you some solutions that can help you achieve that. Thank you. I got a thumbs up. I really appreciate for your insights. It's really helps us to be able to have this as an engagement topic. So really excited for all of us to be here. You know, Common pitfalls that we are seeing among our clients that we'd love to share with you, to prompt for you to think about whether you guys have similar things in your processes or in your teams that you might want to address and you might want to think. One of the number one pitfall that we often see, it's allocating your open to buy dollars by department or by head count, because you're trying to be fair to every merchant, and you're trying to be fair to be able to give them enough open dollars so that they could be able to buy and prove their category that works well. Well, some teams really assign sometimes oven budgets to, not necessarily to the top key performers, but again, to be able to drive the variety, right? So they would allocate the budget to our new categories in a similar way because they want to get variety in. Well, but it really should be on a data-based contribution, really not politics. Take aside the fairness in this particular case. Your whole merchandising team should work as one, right? They're sitting together in one boat and they're going towards the success. So it's not about who got a bigger pie or more open dollars. It's about how the assortment needs to be balanced and who are the primary drivers to your profitability and your margins. That's what needs to happen on your teams if it's not happening today. Assuming variety equals breadth, really thinking about that you can deliver the feeling of variety through colorways and merchandising and styling, but really not the SKU count itself. This is where visual merchandising come in hand so much, and working with the merchants to really be able to do what they do best. We often underutilize that ability by just trying to bring more product. Going deep without a velocity triggers. Depth should never be static, number one, and you should never go deep on the not on the new styles. You always need to first test them. And really, if there's a way to use auto replenishment or rapid reorder signals, it's really not about upfront bulk buys anymore. So this is where the agile manufacturing comes in, right? It's pull versus push strategy in merchant in supply chain that we need to really discover and make this work. Overcoming Overcommitting to the newness is another thing that we often see. And a fresh drop every week sounds exciting until you're really sitting down on unsold product with shrinking margins. There's really not necessary for us to be able to drop new product every week. But what's necessary is to freshen up our floor, re-merchandise it visually, get customer excited, show them how the different product can be worn, that they potentially the first look didn't catch their eye, the second might, right? But and strategically drop in the products and bring in the new drops that can help you to make sure that it product is sold. So don't bring a lot of it, test it, and then try to produce the demand. And it's really critical that your assortment architecture shapes not only your margins, but your customer perceptions of your brand overall at the end of the day. It's everything gets equal funding, then your strategy is really diluted, right? So you want to make sure that really you are focusing on what's true core to your brand. We often see the confusion, and clients and in big, even large retailers with their private label brands come to us and say, our customer is confused. We don't even understand anymore who our customer is because we start bringing and testing all these different things, which attracts too many customer personas, and it's very difficult to market and it's impossible to sustain. So refocusing is going to be very incredible. But if you are really leading your decisions with the data guidance decisions based on your depth and breadth, then really you help to creativity to really guide the breadth, and it also helps to take some of the pressure from your resources and open up some more time for them to actually do the necessary analysis and be able to get inspirations for your performance overall. And it also helps you to really build both profit and loyalty for every buy. And that is our goal at the end of the day. Our goal is not how many units and revenue that we actually bring in. Our goal should be how much our revenue actually dedicates to our profit. If our large amount of sales draining our profit at the end of the day, then we are not going to be able to sustain the business. So that is the key when we are looking at these things here up. Now, as we are coming kind of to the top of the hour, I want to take a couple more questions that coming in, but I mostly want to really share a case study, right, that helped us with one of our clients that we wanted to share with you. So hopefully this can resonate and give you some ideas as well. one of the specialty retailers that we have really struggling with the inventory bloat and inconsistent margin. So when they came to us, initial symptoms, they were having high volume of SKUs but low turn. They also had stockouts in their best sellers and overstock on a testing fringing items, and it really confused the brand identity overall. So what we did, number one, is we conducted the assortment health audit. Then we mapped the margin performance by category and supplier. We build their gross margin return on investment based on SKU tiering strategy. We created after the good, better, and best structure to align to the channels of their direct to consumer as well as their wholesale. And we streamlined their open to buy allocation to the top performers only. But all that started with us identifying what 20% of their SKUs drive 80% of their sales. Believe it or not, at the end of the day, we end up having a really long tail of assortment that was driving draining their resources, driving their profitability down. So at the end of the day, we chopped it. They actually went from a almost 200 SKUs per, I mean, styles in this case, right? Style color variations per season down to 60. And those are those 60 that actually drove their sales, which returned in the result of net profit margin improved by 20% because we not only now were able to go deeper on the styles, we were able to negotiate better pricing with our vendors. They were we able to get better margins that way. Our inventory value reduced by 18%. Our customer retention actually went up 16%. And the merchandising teams gained 10 hours a week due to just a clear decision making framework and not trying to chase the tail. So they were only focusing on what was core for the business. And we've implemented the new strategy for them to bring in the next new assortment. We gave them the framework between the 60-40 split. The 60% had to always be a carryover styles, and the 40% that we reserved for them out of that 20% was actually same or similar styles that we knew were proven with just minor changes, minor tweaks to keep customer exciting. And the other 20% that we reserved is what we reserved for new. And that new product of the 20% only was going through the agile manufacturing pipeline. We were not investing deep dollars or deep inventory in that tail end anymore, in that testing of the piece of anymore. So that's what helped us to succeed with this particular client. And I hope that this gives you ideas as you guys are working up on your end as well. And stop really to think about is letting us think about leading our buys with the instinct and our legacy guides of your assortments as they used to be. Let's start treating every product like it's a business decision. And if you want just to really help you, we offer strategic merchandising diagnostics where we analyze your current SKU mix. We evaluate your gross margin return on investment by category and vendor. We also help you map your white space for you guys to be able to grow and expand in. And we build an assortment strategy that aligns with your channel goals and margin targets. We're really excited to be here. I really hope that you guys continue sending in questions. I will respond to every question, even if you are listening to this as a recording. Do leave the comments with your questions. Give us thumbs up if you think that this content is valuable for you and you want more of it. We will really gladly to continue doing this and as well as presenting you guys with our expertise and sharing our knowledge. Do follow us on LinkedIn. We do have also articles that we publish as well on a weekly basis, and be able to give our pro tips and experiences of our customers to be able for you to learn from one another. Give us thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel that has a lot of valuable content as well to help you succeed on your journey to grow or build a business in the fashion and the retail space. Our next live event is happening on August 21st at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So we're back on a regular schedule of the third Thursday of the month, always at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'd love to see you guys here. I'm excited when I see new faces are coming in and great comments. I really appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you. I really appreciate it. We'll see you guys next time. I look forward to seeing you all on the Thursday, the 21st. Thank you.